Welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. If you're new to the channel and you like what you see, I hope you will please like and subscribe to our videos. We're going to continue on with a project we did earlier in the week where we made a child's apron, and we used bias tape on the edges and for the ties. Bias tape can get kind of expensive, and there's a cheaper way to make it yourself. So in this video, we're going to learn a couple of different ways to make bias tape. This is what bias tape looks like, and this is some I just made myself. When you buy bias tape, it usually comes in a 3-yard package, and you pay around $3 for it. I think is about the current price. So that's $1 a yard. You can get about 24 yards, I believe, out of a yard of fabric. So if you can get fabric, well, even if you pay the top dollar for fabric, you're going to be able to make it cheaper than you can buy it. But it does take time, and I am real bad about spending more money to save time. So this may not be for you, but let's learn how to do it. First of all, we need a rectangle of fabric. It does not, this happens to be a square, it does not have to be a square. But what you're going to do, let's turn it on this side so I can mark it on a dark side and you can see it better. You're going to fold it until, move it up so you can see it. We need a 45-degree angle. And I should probably explain that bias tape is cut on the 45-degree angle. It's not just cut with the grain or with the cross grain. The reason for this is in the bias, your fabric will stretch where it will not with the grain or the cross grain. There shouldn't be hardly any stretch, but there is stretch in the bias direction. And that's so we can use this to go around curved places, or it's just much more forgiving. It won't have puckers in it when you use it. So that's why it's called bias tape. We always cut it on the bias, which is at 45-degree angle. So as long as your fabrics are lined up here and you fold it in the corner, if you have a rectangle, your fabric will stick out further here, and that's fine. But I'm going to lightly press this on my cutting board just so we can mark our bias. And now I'm going to take my long straight edge and a piece of chalk. I'm going to use white chalk. You can use any kind of marking instrument you want because it's not going to show. It's going to end up on the edges and folded into your bias tape, so it will not show. Okay, now that we've got our bias established, we need about 2 inches wide strips to make bias tape with, to make a 1/2 inch double fold bias tape which is the most common size, and that's what we used in our apron. So I can either center this. My center line now is, this is 2 inches. This is 4-inch ruler across here. So I'm centering that chalk line on the 2-inch. Make sure I've got it down here right. Yeah, that's a little better. And I'm going to go ahead and mark. You could just use your rotary cutter and start cutting at this point. But let's go ahead and mark it for the benefit of those people who don't have a rotary cutter and they want to, and they'll have to use scissors. Okay, we have now marked our 2-inch bias strips. And like I said, if you had a rotary cutter, you could be cutting them as we went instead of marking them. But I'm going to now use my scissors and cut these 2-inch strips that are all on the 45-degree angle. Okay, now that we have our strips all cut, I'm going to toss away the 2 corner pieces. They're just too short to mess with in this method. Now then, what we want to do is line our fabrics up so that all the edges, the angles, meet. And then we're going to put right sides together, and you're going to let it stick out. It's not going to line up completely because of your little point here, so you're going to leave your little point. Try to actually, there's going to be point on each side. You want to try to center it so you have the same amount of point sticking out on both sides. And now I'm going to pin it. Okay, now we have all of our strip pinned together, and once we sew it, it will be one long continuous piece of fabric. So now let's go over to our sewing machine. Now let's make 1/4-inch seams on all the seams we pinned. Once again, I'm using just a neutral colored thread. I am using a 11 organ needle. 11 or 14, either one work fine for cotton. Sometimes I even use a 9. I'm using a neutral thread because it just blends in with it. I could use black with this. I could use white because the back of it's white. Just whatever thread you want to use is fine. Okay. And I back stitched both at the beginning and at the end, and you should end right in that V. And now when you open it up, you have a perfect seam there. And you'll want to, we're going to iron them all open, but we want to clip our dog ears. That's what you call the little parts that stick out from your seam, because they will give us problems later on when we're trying to iron it if we don't. Okay, let's sew the rest of our seams, and then we can go on to Now let's head back over to the ironing board. Now we want to iron open all of our seams. And when I say iron open or iron flat, it means parting the seam, pulling it apart, and then ironing it. My iron isn't very hot just yet. Hopefully it'll get there. Okay, we now have all of our seams pressed open. We've trimmed all of our dog ears so they're not sticking out. And I've trimmed all of the threads and got them out of the way. So our next step is to make the first folds in our double fold bias tape. Double fold bias tape looks like this. It's been folded in once and ironed and folded again and ironed. If you try folding all this in yourself, you can, and iron it, you're going to get a few scorched fingers, especially if you're using steam, and it'll steam your fingers. So there is a real handy little attachment. Okay, now we have finished pressing open all of our seams. We have trimmed all of our dog ears off and all the extra threads. If you look at double fold bias tape, it's been folded in on each side once and then folded together again. And you can do that yourself. You can fold it in to the middle and iron it as you go, but you're going to get some scorched fingers. And there is a tool that will help you, and it's very inexpensive. You can get them for just a few dollars. I think I saw a set of about 5 different sizes on Amazon for $7 or $8. So I will link that in the comments below. If you will look at the end of this, we're going to feed our fabric in this away. And start pulling it out on this end. And as you see, it helps if you have a pointy end to begin with, to get it through there a little easier. I'm going to iron that down pretty good. Then I'm going to get a pin, and I'm going to pin it to my ironing surface here to help hold it in place. Got something that's already gotten misthreaded. There we go. We got it going, I think. No, we don't. Something is wrapped around in here wrong. Let me start over. Yeah, this got folded down when it was supposed to be right here on this edge. So when you've got it in there properly, you've got some of the fabric on this side and some up this side. So I'm going to iron that, pin it down, make sure I'm staying in the center as I pull it this way, and iron. And see how that is pulling through? Now, it kind of gets hung up a little bit when you go over a seam, but just be patient and tug a little, and it comes on through. Okay, I'm not going to continue to make you watch me pull it through there, but now we've got our 2 folds towards the center. Now we just fold it in half. And iron the second fold in there. Okay, you can see now that we have our double fold, and it's a little bit time consuming, but it works and it saves you money. So I'm going to lay this one aside now, and I'm going to show you another method of sewing and of ironing the bias tape that will be a whole lot faster, but it could be a little confusing. So if it confuses you, just do it the long way until you feel ready to watch the video again and learn how to do this way. Okay, once again, I'm going to start off with a rectangle of fabric. And I'm going to fold it like we did the last time when we were going to mark our seam. And I'm going to go ahead and iron it. It's not a good idea to iron on these cutting boards very much, but I'm just going to iron this one seam. Okay, now we'll take our scissors and we're going to cut right where we ironed it. Now then, let's lay it back out like it was. And what we're going to do now is we're going to slide this piece over to this side. And do you see here that we have, I believe that's called a rhombus, but we have our 45-degree angles on our outside lines. And we're going to sew this seam so that all our strips are continuing across it at an angle. This is going to save us from having to sew each individual seam. Now this is just step one. In the end, we're not going to have to, we're going to sew 2 seams today and then just cut and it'll be all ready. So let me pin this. We'll take it over to the sewing machine and make a 1/4-inch seam right down this side, with right sides together. I failed to mention that. Now we're going to take it back to the ironing board and iron this seam open or flat. Okay, this is going to save us from having to iron all of those little seams too in the end. Now we're going to take our ironing board away and we're going to mark our 2-inch strips. I'm going to do it on the right side. Doesn't matter which side you do it on, but I'm going to do it on the right side just because the chalk is easier to see on the right side. And I will link this chalk down in the description. I'm lining my ruler up 2 inches over from the cut edge. Okay, now that we have our 2-inch lines marked, I'm going to take my scissor and trim off this little bit of excess we have. Okay, now here comes the fun part. We're going to take this corner up here and we're going to pull it around. Well, first of all, let me do this. Let's cut this first strip about 6 inches in. And then we'll take the other end of that and we're going to bring it up. I'll make sure I don't make this too confusing for you. I'm going to bring this end up to this corner. We're just going to pretend that this doesn't exist and we're going to pin it here. Now we're going to continue to pin all the way across here. And this is going to make a tube, but it's going to be a real awkward shaped one. So don't let that concern you. Our white lines are going to start matching across there. So since we're going to have a 1/4 inch seam, I want to make sure that a 1/4 inch down my white line is matching. Okay, can you see the white lines? I'm looking at about a 1/4 inch down and make sure they match right there, and then pin it. Okay, you can see how awkward it is because you're taking you're not just going from one side to the other. You're going at an angle across it. So we're going to take this over to the machine now and sew a 1/4 inch seam down there. And I'll come back when I've done that. Okay, I've now sewn that awkwardly placed seam, and I'm going to iron it open. Okay, now we're going to come back to the very beginning here where we cut that 6-inch strip. And we're just going to continue on cutting on our white line. And when we are done, see, here's where one of our seams was. And our white lines are lining up. If yours don't line up perfectly, just kind of fudge it, cut through the middle. They'll be close enough. And I'm going to cut on this until the very end, and we'll have one long continuous bias piece with just making 2 seams. Okay, we now have one long continuous piece of bias fabric, 2 inches wide. All of our seams are ironed open, and all of our threads have been trimmed. So that was a whole lot less steps. Looks like this was the one at the very beginning, so we get that trimmed. Okay, now then, we can thread this through the little bias tape maker tool that I showed you earlier, but I have another way to do it, and I will show you that, and it's a whole lot easier, but it's a lot pricier. This is a Simplicity bias tape maker. I'm going to turn it on so it can start heating up. And it comes with a lot of different sizes of tools, and this is the size we need to make the one we've got. So, I'm going to take out this roller, and with the right side up, stick a little piece in there to get it started. And slide it under this little clip. Well, it's giving me a little trouble there. So we have the point tucked in, and then we're going to just roll this nice and neatly on the roller while our machine is heating up. Okay, I'm ready to start threading it through the machine. Just like with our other tool, it helps to have a point, and you can take a pin and push it through and get it started. Once again, we want to make sure we've got fabric coming down both sides. And then we want to lock this in place. Then we remove this, and this surface is very hot. So be very careful. But you want to move it out past that and lock it back into place. And our green light is on. So this tells me that it's ready to go. So we hit run, and it just starts feeding it through. And you just want to make sure you're keeping it centered. And this is real hot coming out the other edge, but you have to tug on it occasionally if your seams kind of get bogged down in it. You might want to wear gloves. Okay, it seems kind of bogged down there. Let's see if we can get it to come on through. There we go. Yeah, we had a little seam we're going to have to fix there. Now, this little machine sells for around $160, $170, I believe. So it is an investment, and you can't justify it just to be making a little bit of bias tape. But I use quite a bit of bias tape in my projects, and so especially for the kits that I offer on my Etsy shop, it's nice to have this machine, and I can make quite a bit of bias tape in a short amount of time. Another good thing with making your own is you can use whatever fabric you want. Bias tape only comes in a few colors, just some basic plain colors. Occasionally you might see a Christmas one or a stripe or something, polka dot, but not very often. So you can make bias tape to match your project or coordinate with it any way you want. So it's just it's a handy little machine to have, and it's a fun toy to have. And there we have it, about 7 yards of bias tape. Okay, I'm going to turn my machine off and set it aside, because we still just have our single fold. Now we can take our iron and just fold it over and do our second fold. Once again, my iron's cooled off a little bit, but you can see now how simple it was to get nice, neat bias tape. So those are the two methods of cutting it out and sewing it together, and two methods of ironing it. And of course, you don't even need any tool if you want to fold it in yourself. But just know that we use a lot of bias tape on the projects that we do, and this is a way to save money, unless you spend $160 on a machine. But it is a way to help you out. So that was our advanced lesson for this week. I hope you will like and subscribe to this video channel. And just remember, whatever you do, do to the glory of God. And next week we will begin our next project, which is going to be a teddy bear and a bunny stuffed. We'll see you then.